Right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talk Openly. My name's Jack, and I'm so grateful to be here with my excellent and wonderful friend, Daniel. Daniel, hi. How you
Hi,
doing?
hi, Jack, my dear and wonderful friend. It's nice to see you and nice to be with you again. I missed you last week.
I know, I missed you too. Yeah. I heard you were on a little bit of a staycation.
Heck yeah, man. It was spring break for my kids. And so I took some time off and just hung out with them and did things locally instead of going somewhere. And it was a lot of fun. Every day ended with a, wow, that was fun. We had such a good
Oh,
time, and that's just, from a dad's perspective, I think you couldn't ask for a better, a better response than that. It was really special. So I,
that
I thor-
is.
thoroughly enjoyed it. I couldn't have asked for a better time to hang out with my kids. And last Tuesday, I was at a River Cats game. That's the Sacramento baseball team.
Fun. So it sounds like kind of the maybe the opposite, or not necessarily opposite, but yeah, just kind of in contrast to our topic tonight, which we're going to talk about eventually, which is kind of when shit hits the fan and things get a little bit very uncomfortable and just hard. But so I'm looking forward to having that
Me
conversation with
too.
you.
Me too. I think it's going to be an interesting conversation, I think.
Yeah, I think so too, and well needed. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe you could tell me a little bit about, you've had this week of kind of a little bit of vacationing, spending time with loved ones. What's been going on with your meditation with all of that?
A couple of things that I think are kind of noteworthy. One was that I was having a hard time sitting in my regular place and posture and everything because I was having some like hip pain, and whenever I did it, and I just couldn't. It was frustrating me. I couldn't quite get it to where it didn't hurt, and so I just started sitting like sitting on something like a chair or something instead for a while, and I was sort of disappointed about it. And then I went to a Wednesday night meditation at the temple, and I sat in my normal sort of position, and I was a little concerned. I just said, "Well, I'll move around or whatever if I need to." And it was interesting because pain showed up in the other hip, not the one that normally was causing me grief. That one was
Uh-huh.
fine. The other hip, and it wasn't that bad, right? But it was like there, it was present. And it was really interesting because I noticed that when I sort of like made friends with the pain and relaxed into it and breathed into it, it was a much different experience. It wasn't so much resistance. And then eventually I just sort of shifted. I was like, okay, that's enough of that, and it's gone. Like I haven't had
No
that.
way.
Yeah, so I can go right back to the cushion, no problems there. So maybe it just needed to be loosened up a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah, but the experience of sitting with the pain was a good one. And as long as it's not too uncomfortable or you think you're going to hurt yourself, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Yeah, pain can be kind of an interesting meditation object. Yeah,
Yeah, it is. It's really shifty. You
it
think, at
is.
least for me, I when it starts to arise, or like for me, what happens is I'll get my legs will get frozen, and it'll kind of start in my ankle and my toes, and it's just that really kind of uncomfortable sensation that I know when I get up, it'll be really ticklish, and I just want it
Yeah,
to not be there,
right.
um, and but yeah, if I like allow it to just kind of have take its shape, take its form, whatever it's going to turn out to be, it is just interesting. And sometimes it doesn't turn out to be as bad as I think it's going to be.
Yeah,
So it might just be that I'm creating this scenario in my head, and then stopping it anything from it even happening, and then I don't get to have that experience, which that's usually what I do, is I kind of,
yeah.
I'll shift, I'll move my leg. But
They
no, it
both
is
seem like
great.
viable strategies, you know?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one is sort of like using the meditative practice to sort of like stay with it a little bit. Like you were saying,
Right.
just watching. One of the things that I think is absolutely amazing about is pain feels very real, feels very solid in a
It
way.
does.
And I'm always blown away by how when I do use pain as a meditation object, how this sort of this fluctuating, how it comes and goes, right? Like it's maybe present constantly, but my awareness of it comes and goes. Just like I can't, usually maintain my object of concentration, whether it's my breath or something else. I usually at some point drift off of it, and the same is true for pain. At some point, I
Mhm.
drift off of it.
Yeah.
Like I just can't stay with it that long. So, yeah. So that's one thing. The other thing, I was inspired by Lama's talk about nature and meditating in nature. And
Yeah.
so the Sacramento weather we've got our like 1 or 2 weeks of spring before summer gets here.
Yeah.
So like
Yep.
last week or whatever, that was all like winter storms and all that. Now it's like 80 degrees and sunny and beautiful and amazing.
Ah, I'm
Yeah,
so
it's
jealous.
sorry. Don't worry, it's gonna be like blisteringly hot, no doubt,
I
within just
know.
lickety split. So
I
we'll
know.
enjoy it while it lasts. But I've been meditating out on the back deck, and just it's so nice. It's so enjoyable. All the birds and flowers, and then it's just
Yeah.
so good.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Yeah, I definitely envy the Sacramento spring because Washington spring is like basically a Sacramento winter.
Mm,
and and it goes until like the first week of July. No joke. No
yeah.
joke.
Mm,
And
mm,
and so I'm really looking forward to when I have like blocks of time where there's no clouds in the sky.
yeah.
That's going to be good. But I'm also I started a gratitude practice, and because yesterday I was noticing the weather and I was feeling like I just don't want this. Like, why did I move here? Like, just really kind of beating myself up about like this weather, like confounded thing. And I was like, you know what? How about I just turn this on its head and recognize, like, actually, I came up here exactly for this weather. Like I came up here because I know that long term it's going to be a place that is going to be maybe safer to live in some ways, climate wise.
Yeah.
It's verdant. It's, the air is clean. So how about I think about all of the ways that this is really
Yeah.
an excellent choice. And thank you, Rain.
Right.
you know,
Right.
oh
Isn't that
gosh.
amazing how like just like pain or anything else that's causing us some discomfort, weather it's just one factor. It's
Yeah.
just one thing. It's just one sort of condition, right? Like there's so much else to think about. But when we're disappointed by the weather and we wish it were otherwise and all that, it can really start to take this huge sort of like it can really cloud our vision, right?
Yeah. It becomes an enemy, a real enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a silly
Mm,
thing to have the weather be our enemy.
I know. We have literally zero,
Right.
absolute zero control over. Maybe that's why it's fun to shake our fist at it, is that it's like, I know that there's nothing I can do about it, but I can still be angry. It's like that little,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. It's something to grumble about and to talk to
Yes.
people about. How about this weather?
Yeah. Unifying.
Yeah. What's going on with you,
Um,
Jack?
oh, it's been a pretty wild couple weeks, I have to say. A very dear friend of mine lost her mom suddenly, very unexpectedly. So I've been, supporting that person, and actually going to be taken off to the Midwest tomorrow to hang out with this person. Um, so that's been like, one big thing, but then there's kind of like this backdrop of other stuff happening. Like work has been kind of wild lately. Like there's been a lot of interpersonal stuff that's kind of challenging. Like so I'm part of a team of peer support specialists at the hospital. So people who like have lived experience of mental illness and or like substance use challenges. And we started kind of organizing around, that we feel like we're really not getting compensated well for our experience and the very difficult work that we do. And so people are rightfully organizing. And since since I'm one of the people who's been a little bit of like a catalyst of that, you know, people are coming to me and, you know, with complaints and stuff. And so it's just, you know, it takes a lot of energy to field that stuff. Yeah. And to validate and you know, also try and I mean, I always kind of feel like, okay, if I feel a little bit responsible, you know, and so I want to keep up with people about stuff. So that's kind of like that's the work situation. And yeah, and also had a really weird interaction with someone who I used to be very close friends with like 10 years ago, but haven't talked to in a decade. And this person reached out to me and said something really kind of inappropriate, just really kind of unprompted. And so that was really bizarre. And I, you know, I really, really had to practice, okay, what would, like what if I was Shakyamuni Buddha, like how would I respond to this situation? And so it's kind of, it was actually quite a beautiful teacher in itself to receive this text message that was sexually inappropriate from someone who I haven't heard from in a decade, and just think, you know, pause, right? You know, like I really am proud of myself about that. I sat with this instead of just being like, bro, what the, you know, like, and doing what I wanted to do, which is being like, what is it? Like, what?
Yeah,
You
what's
know,
wrong with you?
right, exactly. What's wrong
You're
with you?
sick.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so I just sat with it and thought about that, you know, and I even imagined Shakyamuni Buddha holding my phone, you know, and what would he look like, you know, reading that. And it just really brought my attention to how this person, you know, must just be really suffering, you know, like really suffering to send this message to someone who they don't even know anymore.
Right.
You know? Like that, there must be a very deep loneliness happening there. Yeah. And so I did respond, and I responded compassionately, but also, you know, firmly, like this is not appropriate, and I don't feel comfortable with this, but also expressing my concern. Yeah. And it was really great. You know, the person got back to me in the morning and said, you know, thank you for your message and my deep apologies. I'm actually like starting to recognize that I'm dealing with mania, you know, like a symptom of bipolar. And so that was just really, it felt good to be like, okay, you know, this stuff works. It really does. It works. And to be able to, you know, move through this like kind of conflicted and ugly feeling situation and have it at least somewhat come out in the end with a little bit of compassionate resolution, you know, okay. Right. You know, that this person understands what happened and also sees that was inappropriate and is also expressing that he's going to get help. So yeah, it felt like a success, a dharma success.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's one of those situations where you can kind of like afterward, you can kind of give yourself a pat on the back and be like, wow, that was skillful. Right. Yeah. Like that. And like you said, it works, right? That's of course, right? Like, so being able to take a little break, to think about it sort of from this different perspective, right? Other than just the habitual sort of emotional reactivity and whatever, allowing your thoughts to take over and all of that. Like you really just sort of just see things the way they are and be like, oh, right. Like, of course, there's just somebody's a suffering being. Otherwise, this wouldn't be happening, right? Yeah. I mean, the very fact that somebody thought that they knew you 10 years later, right, enough that they'd want to do that is evidence that their thinking is screwed up.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And if you've got that kind of screwed up thinking, your world is nothing but suffering as far as I'm concerned.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, good job, Jac.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I definitely mulled over it for a while before I sent anything.
Good. Yeah, there was no need. You didn't have, hey, you could wait a couple of years, it sounds like, you know?
Yeah. No, for sure. Oh man. But it was so interesting to say at the same time, you know, so I've got my everyday life practice and then my meditation training, and my meditation is just like, oh my gosh, it feels like I don't know. I'm in the circus right now when it comes to my meditation. It's like every bell and whistle and flying monkeys, and it's just wild.
Isn't it amazing?
There.
Isn't it amazing how sometimes it can be just so clear and peaceful and calm? And you think, oh, right, I'm making progress. This is it. I'm getting
Yeah,
somewhere now. And then, and then all of a sudden the flying monkeys show up and it's all
it's all over. Yeah,
over.
for now. Right.
Yeah. No, at least, but the difference is that before you weren't aware of the flying monkeys, right? So you acted on it,
Right.
right? Like, you're like, oh my God, flying monkeys! I need to text Jack. I haven't heard from Jack in 10 years because there's flying monkeys, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then now you're like, oh, I see. Like, there's flying monkeys. Okay.
Right. Don't need to respond. They're just there.
Oh no, they're just there doing their
They're just
thing,
there
right?
being a little wild.
It's a lot like, it reminds me a lot of the talk that Lama gave about nature and about how he was comparing the sound of a chainsaw to the sound of like a beautiful bird, or he said actually an
Yeah.
eagle. And then the whole point was actually really well made, that they're neutral in a sense, right? Like
Yeah.
that they're just sounds, right? And thoughts are just, they're just phenomena. Like, okay, all right, there they are. But being able to develop that awareness, to watch it, to be able to see it, and to come back to presence, that's the practice.
That is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think I'm still doing that. I'm not totally off the horse. I get back on. So it's
Okay.
good. It's good. That's the practice.
That's
Yeah.
it. Well, what do you think about a Lojong slogan? Shall we?
I'd love to. Yeah, let's do it.
All
Get
right.
us going.
I will share my screen.
It's funny he said that about the eagle, and it is true that eagles really are they're somewhat seagull sounding.
Yeah, it's not I wouldn't say that's the prettiest sound, but it is quite majestic.
It is, yeah. Just knowing that they're there too is awesome.
Right. All right, here we go. Random Lojong slogan.
All right. Ooh,
Oh, even
number
the
4.
remedy. Oh, sorry. Even the remedy is free to self-liberate. That's number 4. Huh.
All right. And it says, so this is part of point 2, and there's 9 instructions. Number 1 is cultivating absolute bodhicitta, which consists of 5 instructions. And even the remedy is free to self-liberate belongs to the first division of absolute bodhicitta. And then, cultivating relative bodhicitta. So it's kind of, it's like, where does it say that these also must not be reified and must be let go?
Yeah.
Art phenomena as dreams.
Right. I noticed this actually. I've seen this one's come up for me before. And I notice it because I actually I do tend to sometimes, like, I'll be out, wandering around or whatever, and I'll be like, oh, contemplate all of this as dreams. It's all dreams. And then actually the dreamlike nature does in fact get reified. Like, it becomes very like, that's how it is. That's actually it. This is like, it's like I start to kind of latch on to it and to solidify that concept, when it seems to me that what this slogan is really talking about is that, so the remedy, it's to counterbalance, right? So like, we're too far over here, right? We've said that things are absolute and or solid, right? They have some kind of inherent being to them. And that's sort of like the mindset that is being counterbalanced by things like noticing that it's all dreamlike, right? But you don't want to go too far the other direction, right? We're trying to get right down the middle. And so I think anyway, that's what this slogan means to me, is to really to make it, all of these tools for these remedies, as they say, are a way to achieve balance. And anytime that we start to hold on a little too tight, even to the teachings, that's kind of missing the point.
That's right. Yeah. And there's this quote here by Jamyang Control of The Great Path of Awakening. When we look at the presence of the remedy itself, these thoughts about the absence of true existence, there is nothing for the mind to refer to, and they subside naturally on their own. Yeah, and that's even, we were talking about my meditation right now and how it's just completely all over the place. That is a really powerful kind of remedy. It's just to remind myself of that even, so of course the thoughts are already, self-liberated, as they say, but so is, the practice of shamatha itself is also, you know, uh, empty of that permanence that I'm so strongly attached to, believing that something is permanent, because I do the same thing in my shamatha meditation, where I really want that experience of calm, but ultimately, like you said, it also has that absence of true existence, like it said there. Yeah.
One area where there were these 2 points, one about regarding all phenomena as dreams and the other about examining the nature of unborn awareness. And as far as the regarding all phenomena as dreams, one thing that I've noticed recently is sometimes when when I notice that I've like objectified or reified or created a person somehow, out of somebody like talking, and I'm having a reaction, right? And my ego is sort of layered up a little bit, and there's me and there's them. There's that sort of duality going on. When I notice it, sometimes actually sort of like, I'm like, whoa, what if like this is like a dream being, right? And therefore there's this sort of like a little taste of like emptiness there. There's not it loses its solidity. And what I notice when I imagine whoever I'm sort of imagining as this person, when I think of them as like a person in my dreams, it all calms down like a lot. Like it's a pretty amazing thing to sort of witness, just to see like, oh, right. Yeah, it's not what I think it is. It's not this solid person. It's such a beautiful thing to experience in the moment, right? Just this sort of like, right, it's okay. It's okay. Like things aren't what you think they are.
Settles down a little bit.
It does
Yeah.
settle down. It's true.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Lojong.
Always good.
Always helping
I'm a
reorient.
little bit worried sometimes when I press the random button during chat, because I know that or during our talks, because there are some that are a little bit tricky. I'm like, oh,
They are.
I don't know what I'd have to say about that. I'm always
That one was a little tricky.
a little tricky, but there's some that's even trickier for me.
Well, when we get to one of those, we'll say, "Uh-oh, tricky," and then we'll just run away and hide.
Hit the button again. Oops.
Oh man. Well, yeah, speaking of run away and hide, our topic tonight, which is kind of like when things just go haywire, when life just gets so complicated and things are just coming out of left field. That feeling of kind of like all hell breaks loose. um, and I was thinking about this topic, really in response to what happened with my friend and how sudden her mom's death was, but I started thinking about how there's been times in my life where things have been not even like that, where there's not like a death or something that tragic or traumatic, but it's just like everything just feels so incredibly overwhelming. And so I thought we could talk a little bit about some experiences we've had in our lives. But one thing that's really topical right now is that the Dalai Lama has been in the news the last couple of days, and it's a little bit of what the media is kind of naming a scandal, and this is kind of one of those examples of where like, oh wow, something can just come out of left field, and what do you do when people start kind of accusing and blaming and shaming you? An interesting example. What did you think of this, Daniel?
Well, first I was shocked, right? In the beginning, because it was I just opened up the news and I'm like, ding, right up at the top, right? And
just to clear for people who haven't heard, there was this incident where a couple months ago, so this video has resurfaced that a couple months ago, the Dalai Lama was approached by a young boy who wanted to give him a hug, and I think they hugged, and then he stuck out his tongue and said, you know, suck my tongue. But it was like the I guess the reaction of the audience was very like ha ha ha, you know, the whole thing is like very playful. And you know, in my kind of witnessing of, you know, other times that he's done playful things, it seemed to be in the same vein. But anyway, so but there's been this uproar, and I'm curious, you know, yeah, what you were saying. Because it did
Yeah,
feel,
well,
it felt scandalous and kind of upsetting too.
well, yeah, it definitely. Well, so one of my big sources of news is this website called Reddit that
Sure.
allows people to comment on the news, and I was amazed, actually. I was sort of blown away by the incredible aggressiveness like this.
Very
I mean,
much.
it was people were ready to pounce.
Oh my gosh, so much.
I mean, in a way, it was weird to me because there's a you know there's all kinds of scandals with various leaders and political religious leaders, and it sort of is like, and it's just I think that what happened, what it seems like to me, is like when there's actual gnarly scandals going on, people are like, oh, well, it's, you know, it's these political leaders, or it's these, you know, it's the Catholic Church, whatever. It's just to be expected. It's
People have
kind of,
come to expect it. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they're just like, oh, it's whatever, right? Like it's, yeah, the sky's blue. Of course, you know, this is going on. And so people will sort of like, be like, yeah, I wish it wasn't like that, but whatever, right? So it's pretty mild usually, the reactions. People still are against, you know, people getting harmed or perceived harm or whatever. There's that. But like, I'm just saying, like, there's this, generally the response isn't that great. And in this case, what blew me away was, wow, like everything is like this hard, really hard, like incredibly attacking, sort of
Yeah.
visceral, you
Like
know.
tear, like wanting to tear him down. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, man, you know, like it got, how long has he been the Dalai Lama? And you know, like people,
Yeah.
I think it's because he is so revered, and because he is a symbol of compassion and peace and wisdom, and you know, all these things that we admire and want, you know, in ourselves as well. And so to I think that like any sort of fall from grace, or what appears to be something like that, people, you know, like people just are ready to pounce because it looks hypocritical, or it looks, you know, like, aha, it was too good to be true. No one's perfect, right? And so I was really blown away by it. And I mean, I definitely saw within the Buddhist community a lot more reasoned discussions around it, including people saying, yeah, like that looks like a, you know, screw up, right? Like at least from a media perspective, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't seem like a smart move. And a lot of people, even within the Buddhist community, were commenting on how, like, well, it wasn't the right thing to do, especially since you could tell that the kid himself didn't seem to appreciate it, right?
Yeah.
Even if the audience was laughing and, you know, having a good time, the kid didn't seem to be having a good time.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
even just from that standpoint, it did seem like, yeah, like, oh, that just doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
But I at the
Unskillful,
same,
maybe. Yeah.
yeah, a little unskillful. And at the same time, I was like, wow, like if that's the big scandal, huh? Like that's it, huh? There's like, where like I didn't see anything myself that was terrible, right? Like I just was like, yeah, that's a kind of a minor thing, but I could see this massive uproar over it. So
Yeah.
fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I know. And it was interesting. It was kind of one of those experiences where it was like, okay, I can really watch what my mind does, you know, because my first reaction was like, damn it, you
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
you know, for a lot of reasons, you know, that yeah, we don't want bad things to happen to, you know, innocent people. And also like, you know, how much, like it felt like at first like, oh gosh, I've invested all of this like time and energy into, you know, this lineage and whatnot. And like, you know, is that getting screwed up? Like, do I have to like defend him and prove why this is all still okay and good? You know, like
Right.
there was this real kind of like, oh fuck, like like what do I do, you know?
Right.
But I think, you know, you're so right that really like taking this kind of like this breath taking a breath and like, okay, am I just gonna throw things out the window? Because my immediate response, and also my kind of like, I don't know, being so into a social justice kind of like world for so long, that I do have this tendency to just pounce when I like see, you know, harmful behavior, especially from someone in a high position. It's like, you know, there really is that wish to kind of take people down. And so I was just watching that response in me, and also the kind of like fears of, you know, my own practice and whatnot. And it was like, wow, pump the brakes.
Yeah.
It's okay, you know,
Yeah.
it's okay. It really is. And you can also see those kind of multiple truths at once, right? That like at the same time that this was, in my opinion, a kind, like you said, kind of an unskillful action, and one that made this, you know, little person uncomfortable. At the same time, you know, I can also still deeply revere and respect this great teacher, you know, who's still a great teacher. We don't need to throw it all out. And so, yeah, it's been interesting to watch how that kind of media storm, kind of this example of when, like, when this type of thing hits the fan, and you get to see like where everybody is, like how we just get so like reactive and so
Yeah.
intense. Um, it was very, very interesting.
I agree
Yeah.
with you. I think it was a great moment for some like personal reflection on the matter, right? Like, what do I think? Right? I can see the reactivity around me, you know, both within and outside of the various Buddhist communities, and I could see all of that. But then I was like, what's my own take on this? Like, based upon what I've seen, right? Like, and how do I actually feel about this? And it wasn't the same, I don't think, as any of them. It wasn't, it actually was my own. It was a very personal sort of like, huh, right. Yeah, that's right. We have human teachers, right? And, you know, like everyone, including the Dalai Lama, is subject to, you know, old age and having the times change, having their minds, their brains, their bodies, everything change.
Yeah.
And I took it sort of as a good learning lesson, right? And I didn't, at least for myself, not to get too getting my identity wrapped up in all of it, right?
Yeah, right.
You know, like, it's not me. This is, yeah, just like what we're talking about with the weather. Yeah, this is how it is. You know, this is one aspect of life, something that's going on right now. It's going to change or whatever, but there's also a ton of other stuff going on. So like, why get so focused, so wrapped up, so like, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like it's a collapse of like, think to me anyway, like to give in to like too much, like allowing too much like emotional or mental upheaval over something like this is a sign that I've wrapped myself up and gotten attached, and
Mm,
I don't want to do
totally. Yeah. Yeah, it's moving that like laser beam focus on that one moment and kind of just pulling out a bit, you know, just like
that.
expanding the vision. Okay, I'm going to pull back, you know. I think that's just very reasonable. And yeah, it's aligned with what we're trying to do in our training. Um, and yeah, so I'm glad that that happened this week for us to be able to talk about this in this way, because I think it really just um, it shook me up, and it also I think his response and kind of his team's response helped me in that I was able to see, okay, it actually reminded me of times when things like that have happened with me, where I'm in kind of the middle of a shame like shitstorm,
Yeah.
right? And I haven't responded mindfully. And so his team has been really excellent in saying, you know, wow, we're just sorry. You know, he said, I'm sorry, you know, like this is that any harm came to this person and his family and to, you know, the larger public. And that really is like such a great example, because it's like, you know, I learned from that example that I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to defend myself. You know, if my life is not is not at threat, you know, if I'm not being like physically threatened, you know, I can just say, gosh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. In that sense, it's quite refreshing,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Mm.
learning. Yeah. I'm
Well,
glad
I
we
guess.
talked about this, because I was feeling
Yeah.
like just a little bit heartbroken, to be honest, like about just,
Mm,
you know, I don't want anything like that to happen to him or to anyone or to that boy, or, you know, it just, everything
right.
felt like, ouch, ouch.
Yeah, yeah. But isn't it interesting how we can observe, regardless of who is the currently, in the news, and society is making a big deal out of, even what appears to be incredible villains. I'm not suggesting the Dalai Lama is a villain. I just mean, like, even when we're like, no, that person is bad, 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 right? That we don't know anything, right? Like, we don't actually usually, like, we're so far removed, and unless we've had direct experience, there's not a lot to go off of other than what everybody else thinks, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, and our own projections as well, right? So there's this, like, I have this, like, I have an attitude myself of, I'm used to authority figures. In my mind, they're all abusive, right? That power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so I have a very cynical attitude towards authority. authority
Same.
with, and so there, it's kind of that, even that was kind of interesting to show up, because, I'm like,
Right.
that hasn't, like, gone away or anything, right? Like, it's still very much there. And there was this sort of like, oh, really? Like, when I saw the headlines, I was like, oh my God, no, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Here too, and no, it does not. It doesn't appear to me to be anything like what's being made out to be. But
Yeah, for
again, I
sure.
don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Ultimately, we can't know, you know, but
No,
I can certainly, I feel like I can very, I can assume the intentions, you know, and of course, like, you know, as people are saying now, like, intent versus impact. Of course, you know, if someone's harmed, even if you had good intent, you know, someone has been harmed. And so I think that really is something that he modeled, though, is that response of like, okay, this was harmful,
right.
and I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Even though his intent, of course, was not to harm.
yeah, that's what I mean about it being refreshing.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Oh man, I so maybe I can share one of
Yeah, have
my.
you ever had the shit hit the fan for you, Jack?
Oh yeah, I've had the shit hit the fan. Yeah, and you know, it's actually not too long ago. It's been about 3 years, 2.5 years since shit really hit the fan for me. So I moved up to Washington State, um, very, you know, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, you know, rose-colored glasses. I had this group of friends, who had really, in the span of things, only known each other as a group for months. So not a long time, right? um, but there were, you know, we all had relationships with each other, and some of them were longer, some of them were shorter. But we had decided that we were going to move somewhere and buy property together and have kind of like, you know, just a wonderful, like, idealized anarchist commune. That was the idea, right? Was
I love
like,
it.
you know,
I love
we're
it.
gonna be as free as we can, and you know, really support each other and do it for the long haul. And that was the dream. And so amazingly, we found this plot of land up here in Washington on the Olympic Peninsula. And if anyone knows this area, it's paradise. It's incredible. Like, if you love the mountains, this is the place to be. And we found this spot at the end of a road, backed up into not just national forest, but national park lands, along a river. And it's just this, you know, everything that my mind had created as the ideal that was it, and we got it. We got it. Somehow, we, with no money, right? We were able to get this land. Shortly after I moved up, it became clear that there was a lot of tension between people here, and that we were going to have a lot of work to do interpersonally. But there was just there were ways that we couldn't come together, and one of those ways was that there were kind of half of our group were white people, and the other half of our group were people of color. And the folks of color over time let us know that there was one person, a white man, who was really kind of causing harm on the side to both of them. And we started trying to address this. It still kept happening, and folks felt like we weren't doing enough, that me and a couple of the other white people weren't doing enough. And it got really, really hard. There was a lot of kind of the culture, kind of like calling out, and hard conversations. And, I really did my best to try and be present for it, but I was also just really confused. I could understand to an extent, what people were talking about. And then there were some things where I just felt like, I feel like if we could, can we negotiate, can we just get through to each other? But it was almost like the hurt was too much at that point, that it could only be hurt and angry, and poorly. And so eventually, financially, all the things kind of fell apart. There was a statement made to the local community, kind of anarchist community, about how we hadn't done enough as, white people to support these folks of color. And it was that feeling of oh my God, my life's totally falling apart. My life's totally falling apart. People believe that I'm racist, which, fair enough. I am in my own way racist, and working on it, but it was just that extreme pressure where it was I could feel myself just being my brain is I'm not functioning. And it was a teacher. Looking back, I can say, wow, I have learned so much from that experience. One of the big things that I learned was that I can't control what other people think of me. I can do my best to live my life, ethically, to be a kind person. But ultimately, people are going to believe what they're going to believe, and I can't control that. And so, yeah, it was just that real hard medicine. And I'm so grateful that it happened, and not happy that people got hurt, but I do think that our failures really are this ground, right? This ground for, can I return continually, no matter what, can I return continually to my aim, which is to develop bodhicitta?
Right.
And can I see these people who are, really, so upset with me, and so disappointed. That, I think that's the word, really, we're so disappointed in me. And that feeling of shame, of, that can I still return to, oh yeah, and they're Buddhas too, and I'm a Buddha, and it was such fertile ground for practice.
I bet it was, it didn't feel probably that way in it, did it?
There were times where I was able to kind of see that, and I think that was where if we, if we have some awareness, can I just sit with this feeling? This feeling of like literally it feels like bricks are on top of you. That was the feeling where I was like, I'm like not, I can barely breathe. I feel I can't think, but wow, what does that feel like? Oh my gosh, wow. And so it was kind of enlightening, of that just sitting with that, and not allowing myself to go into that kind of spiral loop, like to kind of traumatize myself, and like, oh gosh, this feeling is so bad, you're so messed up, how could you possibly do that, why did you not say that, like, or why did you say that, why did you not say that, just going through. But if you can avoid that and just be with that feeling, it's really powerful, and it passes.
And it passes. That's like, to me, that's the thing, right? This too shall pass always,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it might pass like a, what do you call it? Like a kidney stone or something. Like it might,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
take a while and be painful, but it will pass. It will change, right? And so that's some amount of comfort. I think one thing that strikes me in your story is you were saying, yeah, you can strive to be ethical, you can strive to live right, and people are still going to think what they think. The other thing is, at least, there's this sort of sense sometimes of our own ability to change things, right, for the better. It sounded to me like the people of color in your group had a lot of hope that you, of all people, would be able to change things, right? Not only that you would be able to change your own behavior or whatever they thought was wrong with you particular, but that you would be able to change the entire situation somehow.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, you're a group leader, right? Similar, like at work, you were telling the story about at work that somehow people kind of look to you, like you're there in the middle of it all. And so,
That's true.
uh, and it's interesting because that would certainly give, I can see how that would give rise to an identity for them of who you are, but
Yeah.
also for you, who you think you are, right? Who you
Yeah.
think you are,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
think other people think you are, right?
Totally.
And so being able to see that as well and be a little bit, like realistic about it, right? Like that's, I know that I oftentimes give into that kind of like wishful magical thinking where I think, well, if I just do everything, if I just do it all right, and I'm a good, and if I'm like morally superior, and blah 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 whatever, like if I just do this, then it's all gonna be okay somehow. But it turns out that that's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of times there's a bunch of stuff that's outside of our control, including, trying to change other people. My goodness, right? Like that's an uphill battle right there,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to make them behave a certain way. And so like, it reminds me of the story that you said at the outset of the talk, show, where there was this, where was I going to go with this? Darn it, I lost my train of thought. My goodness.
That's okay. It
Oh,
happens.
it does happen for sure. No,
We,
but there were some similarities there between what you were talking about with the difficult conversation that you had with somebody that had reached out to you.
yeah.
There's just sort of this quote from Sartre that kind of pops up in my mind, that like hell is others, right? And there's
Mm.
always this sort of sense that there's all this like trouble brewing with other people, and yet we have to remain connected with them, right? Like that's our job here, is we're
Mm.
trying to have, we're trying to instill, we're trying to gather bodhicitta, right, and have compassion and recognize the suffering. I guess I think that's where I was going with it, is that recognizing that so much of this suffering is happening, is present, is right in front of your eyes, right? Like it's all these people's thoughts about who you are and they are, and the permanence, and all of these misunderstandings about the way things are is what gives rise to a tremendous amount of suffering. And there's only so much that we could do about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so much of what we can do about it is really just about us and our own perspective, and that naturally gives way to healing. It does make change possible, or it does help to smooth things out, make it better, at least not make it worse. But it's not like magically going to make things transform into exactly what you want them to be. I think that's where I
Right.
was going with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And to accept the fact that of our imperfection, that, that we are going to make mistakes, and like, and that that's okay, and that other people are going to make mistakes. And yeah, like you were saying earlier, trying to change people doesn't really work. It doesn't really work. And so can I just come back to, okay, what can I do here with my own perspective? Yeah, it's brilliant. And it makes me mad too. Like I sometimes, if like, it makes me mad to think like, oh, I can't change other people. No, I don't want to change. I want to change you.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Everything would be better if only you did this or that or the other thing.
Right. It's like that the Shanti Deva quote that is just so fabulous. He's saying this metaphor of the earth. It's so hot, and there's all these rocks and things that are difficult to walk on, and the feeling that, oh, if I could just lay leather out in front of me, cover the whole earth in leather, then it would be so perfect, and it'd be easy to walk everywhere.
Right.
But of course, how absurd that is, this idea that if just everything else changed, then I would be fine. I'd be perfect and I could live my life. But of course, he says, if we just cover the soles of our feet with leather, then we can walk across the whole earth.
Yeah.
And so you're right, it really is about just coming back to this right here. That's the only thing that I have control over. Yeah.
What strikes me in your story that I was thinking about times that similar things that have happened to me in the past. And one of the sort of defining features, I think, is when we really are we think we know how things are going to be, or we at least have some expectation around the way things are going to be. I'll save my story for some other time, but it's very similar in the sense that like there's this idea like, oh, this is going to happen, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then everything's going to be a certain way, right? And it's
there on out.
Yeah, well, and it's particularly troubling. It's one thing when it's just us, but when it involves other people, right? It's easy, especially we've only known them for a few months. We think we know them, and we think we have like some kind of a heart connection, and like there's just this like sort of magic. It's all gonna work out just great. It's
so
gonna be different
grandiose
for us. It's not going to be the same as every other anarchist commune that's ever existed. No. We know something, we're different, all of that, right? And there's this like attachment that builds up to that idea that isn't here right now. It's something that's going to happen, or we want to have happen. And to get there and to realize, no, it could never have been that way, right? Because it's a bunch of people, right?
Yeah.
And having some being a bit more realistic, like there's nothing wrong with aiming for that. Heck yeah, man, of course, right? Like that's beautiful to try to make plans to improve your life situation and make things better. Like, of course. But at the same time, like getting super attached to it, looking a particular way, that's just a recipe for trouble.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think ultimately that is like when it feels like things are really intense and have gone haywire. It's usually, well, it is because we have a misperception about how things should be. That, I really feel like I should be calm all the time, and people should be nice to me, and nothing tragic should ever happen. And then life's just gonna coast. That's how it should be. And so, of course, that doesn't happen because we live in a completely chaotic world. This realm is not easy going. And so shit is going to hit the fan. And so, can we shift perspective and say, wow, okay, yeah, samsara sucks. Okay, this is it. I'm gonna be here. And to not turn away, right? Because I think, that just adds on to it, right? So if I lose myself in that that chaos, and turn away from by using distraction, you know, whether that's substance use or TV or cake, you know, then yeah, then that's just making it, you know, worse in the long run and setting us up for even more chaos.
Yeah, you know, I think that like that's been one of my lifelong lessons. I think that's one of, if Earth is a school, I think that's one of my lessons. You know, that I really need to face difficulties rather than trying to avoid them. You know,
Yeah,
it really, like, and on the one hand, you know, what I'm beginning to recognize is that the way that we deal with these situations, you know, these sort of crises and stuff, that's our growth. That's actually how the way we're responding to these situations, that's how we grow and how we develop and how we adapt and we change. And
yeah,
when we avoid it, when we just sort of whatever put up blockers and try to ignore it somehow or other, we're really avoiding our own growth. We're really limiting our own ability to be really full, complete human beings, right? Like it's yeah, we're not as resilient, right? Like we're not able to
yeah,
sort of handle things moving forward. So like it's really, I don't know, it's just one of those things where it's slowly dawning on me a little late in life that I'm like, oh right, yeah, I guess when this, you know, the shit is hitting the fan, right? I gotta like grab my raincoat and I gotta get the mop and broom or whatever it is I gotta do. Like don't just like go sit in the corner and turn off the
yeah,
light, you
yeah,
know?
for sure. Well, yeah, I mean, if when we can't, there's not a switch that just turns off the bad feelings, you know, it like if we're numbing out or distracting to turn off the bad feelings, we're also going to turn off the other feelings.
That's
And
true.
so, you know, we can't just numb out the things we don't like. We want to be full, wholehearted humans. We got to feel it all. We got to experience it all and see
Yeah,
it, you know.
yeah.
But Daniel, we have so much more to talk about on this topic. You know, we're going to talk about embracing impermanence and not, you know, reacting impulsively. We're going to even talk about like acceptance and commitment therapy, which is really, really an interesting strategy. Um,
Yes. And
and
then, you
also
know, the
your
good thing about
story.
it, yeah, the good thing about acceptance and commitment therapy is that it's not just about these situations, right? Like it's something to help us live our lives in a more meaningful, better way across the board. So maybe at some point we'll get to talk about that some more. It's been
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah. Well, you know, we've got another week coming up.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Absolutely. We always have something to talk about. And no matter what we think, we always fill out our time and have more to go.
I know. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me. It always just really helps me reorient and come back to my intention.
Yeah,
So thank
you're
you.
like, what are they called? You're like a seesaw partner for me.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm like, whoa, I'm over here, and then I talk to Jack, and woo.
Yes, totally. Yeah, I love that. That's such a good metaphor for Sangha. So for all of you out there watching, thank you for being our seesaw partners. We love you and looking forward to next week.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.